This provision was unknown to me when I voted for the bill.
Okay, next question. Next question.
I am not going to hide the truth. This provision was unknown to me when I voted for that bill. And when I found out that provision was in the bill, I immediately reached out to my Senate counterparts and told them of my concern.
They are not buying it. I didn't know what the bill did. Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. Looks like someone should have done his homework. That was Congressman Mike Flood, Republican of Nebraska, facing stiff, brutal, relentless backlash from his own constituents after admitting in front of them that he didn't read what was in that massive spending bill, Republicans, himself included, passed last month by a teensy tiny margin. Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett called out her colleague's claim that he had no idea this specific provision was in it.
Especially with your homeboy talking about he didn't know that was in the bill. That was absolutely in the original judiciary markup that came out. So I knew about it and we fought about it, but okay, whatever.
As alarming as it is to hear that one member of Congress voted on a bill that has such drastic, potentially life and death consequences for the entire country, as well as the lives of the people he represents, without even reading it, Congressman Flood isn't alone. Marjorie Taylor Greene posted on X this, quote, "Full transparency, I did not know about this section that strips states of the right to make laws or regulate AI for 10 years. I'm adamantly opposed to this, and it is a violation of state rights, and I would have voted no if I had known this was in there." Sure you would. The We're All Gonna Die Act, as described now by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer earlier today, now heads to the United States Senate, where Republicans can only lose 3 votes. Senators have already said they will make edits to the bill, which then has to go back to the House for a final vote. As we mentioned in the last hour, pressure in the Senate over this bill is sure to mount following the score today by the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. That office, the CBO, says the bill will increase the debt by $2.4 trillion over 10 years, and the number of people in this country that will go without health insurance will increase by 16 million by 2034, a revision from its original tally of almost 11 million. That is as a result of spending cuts as well as changes to Medicaid and the ACA. Elon Musk yesterday gave a forceful denunciation of this legislation, calling it a, quote, "massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill that is a disgusting abomination." He added, quote, "shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." This afternoon, Elon Musk has initiated a Kill the Bill campaign, telling his followers on social media to contact their congresspeople and senators. Responding to Elon Musk's first criticism, Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania referenced the Republicans who originally took issue with the bill before it was ultimately passed. He wrote this, quote, "I wish I had a nickel for every time the House Freedom Caucus sounded the alarm and nobody listened, boo-hoo, only to find out the hard way. We were right all along. Yay, us." He leaves out one glaring fact. He voted yes. He was one of the Republicans who voted yes on the bill and now wants credit for sounding the alarm. What does that even mean in MAGA world? It's where we start this hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us. Also joining us, MSNBC columnist, author of the newsletter To the Contrary, Charlie Sykes is here. Lucky for us, MSNBC senior political analyst Alex Wagner has stuck around. Ryan, let me start with you. I mean, they knew people would die because otherwise, why did Joni Ernst say, quote, "everybody's going to die," and then go to a cemetery the next day?
Well, I think what Senator Ernst would respond to that, Nicole, in saying that she meant that everyone's going to die eventually. In fact, that's what she said. and that it wasn't in the context directly of the bill. But her response to that question shows a degree of flippantness that Republicans have had about.
Let me just keep the integrity of the clip, because we've played it on this show twice and my viewers know what's in it. A constituent of Joni Ernst says, what about the bill? What about the cuts to Medicaid? People are going to die. And she says, quote, everybody's going to die. So she says, I mean, what you're saying is actually a fact about human life, but she says it in response to a question about the Medicaid cuts in this bill.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I think that's been part of the messaging problem that Republicans have had in terms of what these Medicaid cuts actually mean. And when you try to pin them down on this idea that there will be no benefit cut, despite the fact that there have been multiple independent, nonpartisan forecasting groups that have demonstrated anywhere between 8 and 15 million people that could potentially lose their health insurance as a result of these Medicaid cuts. They don't have a very good explanation for it. They talk about the number of undocumented people that will lose their coverage. That is really a small drop in the bucket compared to the overall spending when it comes to Medicaid. They talk about the able-bodied being able or being kicked off the Medicaid rolls. Well, that's still going to be a coverage gap, regardless of whether or not you think that those people should be on it. And then, of course, there's going to be a significant lapse in the number of people that lose their coverage because of this eligibility rotation that they're going to create, going from 6 months for eligibility re-ups from the original 12 months. People are going to get lost and are going to fall through the cracks as a result of that. So they have not been able to explain why they think that those cuts are necessary in the overall scheme of the budget deficit. Primarily, Nicole, because this bill does not decrease the deficit. In fact, the CBO is saying the exact opposite, in part because of this massive tax extension, the tax cut extension that they have been resistant to address at all. And so it'd be one thing if they were coming to the table and arguing that they were going to increase revenues by taxing some of the more higher earners, the wealthier people in America, and then coupling that with these Medicaid cuts, saying both of these difficult choices are necessary and there's actual tangible evidence that this will reduce the deficit. They're not doing that. They're instead offering these cuts up, which in the grand scheme of the budget are really not that significant, and adding into it this additional tax cut, the extension of these tax cuts, and the net result of all of this is that the deficit is going to increase. And that's why you see people like Elon Musk crying and complaining about it, hoping that something changes. But in reality, on the course that they're headed, that seems unlikely.
I just want to be clear. It's not a messaging problem. I mean, CBO just came out with a figure of 16 million people who will lose Medicaid coverage. And our polling has the people who have been covered by or had family close to them covered by Medicaid. It's 66% of all Americans, 62% are Democrats, 62% are Republicans. So there's no partisan breakdown to who benefits from Medicaid. And it's why you've got Josh Hawley saying, quote, we just cannot do Medicaid benefit cuts. The president agrees with that. And I think that we'll believe that we'll get it through the Senate without Medicaid benefit cuts. We've got massive Medicaid benefit cuts. Just deepen my understanding of what happened beyond a messaging problem.
Yeah, so the issue here, Nicole, and Josh Hawley's a perfect example of this, is the definition of a cut. What Republicans are attempting to argue is that the changes that they're making, the reforms as they call them, to Medicaid will not result in benefit cuts. They're essentially arguing that the folks that will lose their coverage deserve to lose their coverage. When we talk about, for instance, the able-bodied portion, or what they describe as the able-bodied portion of Americans, they deserve to lose their benefit cuts because they think that the country can no longer afford that. So that's where the disconnect here is. They are continuing to say over and over again, President Trump has said this over and over again on his social media channel, that no one are going to lose their benefits, and there's simply no independent forecast that reflects that reality. There are going to be cuts to benefits. The difference here is that Republicans believe that those cuts are worthy. Those cuts should be made. The people that are going to lose their benefits don't deserve those benefits to begin with. And as your polling reflects, there are so many Americans that are connected to someone who gets Medicaid benefits, and it's unclear right now who among that group of people that get the Medicaid benefit cuts are going to fall through the cracks as a result of these reforms. Republicans argue if they fall through the cracks, that's okay because they didn't deserve these benefits to begin with. Obviously, Democrats feel different.
Charlie Sykes, I feel like we're about 6 news cycles away from, Damn right everyone's going to die. Everyone who deserves it. I mean, 16 million people are going to lose their health insurance. Joni Ernst's very informed constituent was correct in pushing back to her, which is why it elicited this callous remark, quote, everyone's going to die, that she doubles down on. What I find confounding is when the Tea Party was awoken from whatever slumber those folks were in, it was about a lie about death panels. You now have the truth about Medicaid cuts. And I wonder what you think the public backlash will be if there is one.
Well, this is a fine mess the Republicans find themselves in, right? Because you have Elon Musk, who has gone rogue, said that there's too much of a deficit. Now, there's only two ways they can go. As Republicans, they can have deeper cuts in spending, and Elon Musk showed that he was failing when he went around with his chainsaw. The cuts would be in Medicaid. The only way to reduce the deficit otherwise is to not extend the tax cuts, and I don't see any way the Republicans are going to do that. So, you know, the question is now, what do Republicans do to make this more palatable to the electorate and to the right wing and to people like Elon Musk? And it's kind of a fiscal Rubik's Cube, because if I'm listening to what Elon Musk is talking about, he's talking about actually making deeper cuts, more draconian cuts, speeding up some of the Medicaid cuts that would kick people off faster and quicker. So in terms of how they're going to figure this out, this is the kind of the nightmare scenario where you have maybe enough votes in the Senate to block this, demanding that the deficit not be increased. And by the way, the CBO numbers are credible. However, I think they understate how much it's going to add to the national debt, because the Republicans use a lot of fiscal gimmicks where some of the cuts expire. If they were made permanent, you would have an increase in the national debt of $3, maybe even $4 trillion. So they have a huge deficit problem, but the only way out of it is either to not cut taxes or cut the spending even more deeply. So it's not impossible that Republicans might actually make this legislation worse than it is right now as a way out of dealing with the defection of Elon Musk and others.